Welcome to Soul, Light, and Body. How are you guys doing today? I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you continue to do your journaling. You're showing gratitude. At least be grateful for three things every day. Write it down. Be grateful for three things every day. This was supposed to be a recorded show, but you know what? We have decided that we're going to come live because the topic is very interesting, and there might be someone out there who would like to ask a question to Charlene on the live show. So we just decided, you know what, you audience are the best, and we want to make you happy. So we just decided, you know what, we're going to do this live. So you can ask your questions. Don't feel ashamed. Ask your questions, and Charlene is going to answer these questions for you. It's a very interesting topic because a lot of times we are suffering with a lot of stuff, and we are so afraid to come out and speak up how we are feeling. We are in a relationship and we're not communicating with our partner and let our partner know how we are feeling. We got trust issues, and this is a great platform that you can ask Charlene questions and she can able to answer you and to help you on this journey. And if there is more need for in-depth coaching, you can reach out to her and she's going to be able to guide you through the process. Because at some point in time, if you want to save your relationship, if the relationship means a lot to you, you got to reach out and get the right kind of help that you're looking for. Because a lot of us are struggling with our intimacy and we don't know where to turn. We don't know what to do. But when we have a coach like Charlene that is here to help you, the individual, that's a plus. That is a plus. So today, we have to be open and we have to be honest with ourselves, honest with our relationship. Because if we're not open and honest, we cannot get the answers that we're looking for. So if that is you and you're looking for answers, reach out. Reach out and get the help that you need to save your marriage, to save your relationship. Reach out and get the right kind of help. What's the difference between a committed relationship and a friendship slash flatmates? The presence of sex and intimacy, but so many couples struggle in this important area of their relationship. Why do couples struggle so much in these areas of their relationship? What is a healthy level of intimacy and sex in a relationship? What are the important factors that create healthy intimacy and sex inside a relationship? How can couples repair flagging intimacy and sex in their relationship? And what can couples do to prevent the loss of this important ingredient of a committed long-term relationship? It starts with making sure these conversations are an integral part of a couple's relationship. And so we are opening up that conversation today with Sharlene Halbert, relationship and intimacy coach, who supports couples to make their relationship worthy of love they feel for each other. Join us in this wonderful, important conversation to discuss this and more. So, we're opening the floor. This is a very interactive discussion. Ask your questions, and Charlene will answer your questions for you. If you need further help, reach out to Charlene and she will help you on that journey. You can repair your relationship, but many times we are just sitting there and we're not reaching out for the right kind of help. So today we're going to dive deep into this subject, and you will be able to understand better about intimacy, sex, and your relationship. Charlene, welcome to Soul, Light, and Body once again.
Thank you
You
very much.
served us well the last time, and I know you're going to serve us better this trip.
I know how to be with the two of you even better now, having done it once before. So
Right, 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 right. Mhm.
Lady Joan, I'm going to hand you the mic right now. Take the mic away.
Wow, what a great day. Happy Wednesday. And it's a great time because opening up and talking about these subject matters, which is always a little hush hush,
True.
it's so important and so key because in order for us to live an harmonious life, live a well life, walk in our true greatness, and walk in our level of excellence, we have to touch on all the areas of our life so that we can help us, ourselves, to live and function in all areas, whether it's relationship, whether it's sex, whether it's intimacy. All of that is our makeup. That's who we are. We live in, we're human beings, we're breathing. And so when we can have the touch point in all different areas, starting from nutrition because we're health coaches, health and wellness, but we also talk about a whole lot of things that make us in the level of alignment so we can live and enjoy that joyful bliss. So I hope that you are zooming in on your goals. Look where we are, almost the conclusion of May. I mean, we started in May, but the time is moving so quickly because we got our event coming up, which we even said, oh my goodness, because a lot of time has been focused on that event. But time is moving very, very quickly. And then we have to look at our goals and our dreams and what we're aspiring for so we can really live that kind of life that we want to live and remind ourselves who we are. You're all special. You're all amazing. Continue to focus on gratitude. Gratitude is, as we like to call it, one of the centerpieces for our life. Love, gratitude, being mindful, be intentional, setting those boundaries. Setting those boundaries are so important because it helps us as an individual to help our well being so that we can stay strong, that we can continue to give. Are you serving? Are you living the life of service? One of the things that we spoke about, Karen and myself, that this year we want to focus more intentionally in serving. We always served before, but we're zooming in a little bit more and taking more seriously and dive in and just soup kitchen, volunteering time, and giving back. Are you giving back today? Are you giving back your time? What are you giving back today? What are you giving back today? So sit with all of that, think about all of that, and see how we can continue to make that impact and to live our best, our true essential self, and just create that impact and leave deposits wherever you go. So when you walk out of a room, whether it's a master class, a workshop, or whatever it is, or like this podcast here, let's leave something that someone can help themselves to better their tomorrow. What are those takeaways that we leave behind that can enhance someone's life moving forward? So just sit on that. Welcome, sit back, relax, and let's enjoy this interesting discussion. Charlene, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for saying yes. You're truly amazing. You're special. And thank you for all that you do. Welcome.
thank you very much, Joan and Karen. I really, really appreciate this opportunity. I loved our conversation last time, and I was really thrilled and touched that you reached out to me again. So thank you for having me here. And I was thinking about, you asked the three things that you're grateful for. So I took a moment. First of all, I'm very grateful for the two of you. You're incredibly supportive, and since I first connected with you last year, I don't know what other people experience of you, but I just, constantly just getting little messages from you telling me how wonderful I am, how special. It's such a beautiful gift that you give to people, and whenever I see a message from you, it just perks up my day. So I'm certainly very grateful for the two of you and what you give out to the world and the energy that you put out, because I know the energy that we give out, the energy that we live inside, makes a difference to people around us. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm also very grateful for the opportunity to be here and talk about this topic, because I think, even with couples that come to me, often it's the very last thing that they even speak about, even though it's the thing, it's the kind of the thing that we don't talk about yet. We focus on all the other stuff, which is important. We'll talk about that. But, it's, and then there are other couples where this is the first thing that they come with, wanting to fix that bit, not recognizing that all the stuff around it is really important. So I'm really grateful to be having this conversation, because it always enriches me as well, because I'm always learning something when in all of these conversations. And the third thing that I'm really grateful for today is music. So I joined a musical theatre course about 6 weeks ago, and last night we had our performance. It was a group of 6 women.
Nice.
And we did a showcase, and it was just so much fun. We all sang a solo. We did a song together and danced, and there were women that had never performed in front of anyone ever before, and they just stepped up with their courage and overcame all the barriers that they needed. And I think, I really want to acknowledge courage in my gratitude as well. Experience, and today there's been a flurry of messages between all of us saying how wonderful it was and we wish you could do it again. So so I'm really grateful to our teacher and the opportunity to perform and just bring music and joy and to ourselves as well as to those around us. So that's what I'm grateful for today.
Wow. Thank you for saying that. And thank you for saying about the messages we leave you, because those are some of the ways that we leave deposits for people. We remind them how amazing they are, because yes, they are. And we leave those messages and we drop those deposits, because sometimes you may have a bad day, you might be, thinking about something or whatever. But when you can just receive a beautiful message, just reminding you who you are, just reminding you that we are so grateful that you're part of our lives, just leaving that. So if today we can all just keep doing that, dropping deposits, saying how grateful you are to someone who has impacted your life and believe in you and help you to advance you forward where you are. Those are great deposits to leave.
They are. And Joan, it brings me to that, to our topic as well, because one of the things that I often share with couples when I'm working with them is bringing that level of acknowledgement and gratitude and things that you appreciate about your partner can often be something that's really difficult for people. They find it really difficult, and when it is hard, there's this idea that I'm having to do something for them, for my partner. And then there's that resistance when they're angry or annoyed or frustrated, and that resistance to wanting to say something nice even can show up.
Right.
And what's really beautiful about what you said, and I'd love to hear your experience of this, because it does lead us into this topic, and that is that when you give gratitude, when you give acknowledgements, when you appreciate things, it's not only the other person that receives it, but that you're putting yourself in the energy of gratitude.
Yeah.
And so often in relationships, people, especially when there's been a lot of challenges, there's life challenges, there's been disconnection, there's maybe ways that they communicate with each other or don't communicate with each other that create a lot of hurt and pain and all of those things that are really common in for all of us. That when we're putting ourselves in that energy of appreciation of the other, it's opening just a little window to something else.
Yeah.
Say that we don't have to give up being angry forever. We can just put it aside just for a moment and also have that moment of appreciation. So I can be angry and I can put my anger aside just for a moment and appreciate something. I can always pick up my anger later if I want to do that. And the more that you give that, space for that, that it creates intimacy. It creates the energy of what else is true. That because both things can be true. I can be annoyed, angry, feeling vulnerable and lonely, and I can also just take a moment to appreciate. And really, isn't that true of gratitude? We can wake up in the morning and we can focus on all the things that are terrible about ourselves, about our lives, about whatever, about our partner, about our kids, and we can also take a moment to just appreciate something. And it's kind of it's a decision we make at some level, and you two are just incredibly good at it because you practice it.
Yeah, thank you.
That makes you get good at it. Right?
Thank you so much. Thanks for saying all of that. I'm just going to jump off with one of the questions to start off with. That I know we're talking about relationship and sex and intimacy, but before each party come together and want to have a relationship, talk to us how important it is to establish what are your core values before you even begin to get involved in something.
Yeah, well, I think you've said it beautifully, Joan. I mean, I think it is the things that you have that are in common. There's two parts to wanting to be in a relationship. I say one is that there's the things that you have that are the same, the similarities and values, and what's important to you are the most important part of connecting with somebody if you want a future together. If your values are completely different, then you will come up against massive problems. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have exactly the same values in everything, but it's super important to know and understand what values are really, really important to you, and what are the absolute no-goes, about that you if somebody doesn't value something that's super important to you, or that they don't have a value for being able to appreciate what you value, then you're going to come unstuck at some point. And then there are the things that are different. So differences are what create spark and chemistry. So differences are also important. Ironically, it's those things that often also become the challenges in a relationship later on. So that thing that you loved about them that was so different to you in the beginning becomes the thing that drives you crazy later. But those are being able to learn to appreciate those differences are important, but values are essential. And often when we fall in love, we're not looking for those values. And I think perhaps that happens a little more when people are older and come into maybe second or third or maybe even fourth relationships, that long-term relationships, that we perhaps have, as we get older, a little more values become a bit more important than that feeling of falling in love. But at any stage, if you're looking at a long-term relationship, understanding each other, what's important to each other, and having a willingness to appreciate the other's values as well is really necessary. That's what creates safety. It creates a strong foundation that you can then navigate the world and your relationship with.
Thank you so much.
Wow.
Okay.
Listening to you, Charlene, is helping a lot of people to really understand that a relationship or a marriage, it takes two people. It's not one person, one party alone, just working on one end, and another party is not communicating, is not participating to help to build a foundation in a relationship. So sometimes you find that many times things start to shift apart because one person is fighting to save something, but the other person is not in the same fight as that individual. And because of that, a rift or a division is created between two people. Because if I want something and if you're looking for something else, we're not on that common ground whereby we can discuss our feelings or we can discuss what's bothering us. So that's the breakdown of the communication. So my question to you now, what is the difference between a committed relationship and a friendship or a flatmates?
I think there's there's so many ways to answer questions, and I love this. You know, the thing that I love about, just as a preface, the thing I love about coaching and the coaching that I do, you know, often people are looking for formulas of things, and certainly out there on social media, there's a lots of, you know, and I've done it too, you know, the tips and the strategies and do it this way and do it that way. But what I love about coaching is that it really is an exploration and a journey, and every couple is different and every individual is different. And so it's, you know, the journey of a healthy relationship really is also about the journey within oneself, and the journey of how you navigate things together. And it's different for everybody. And so even the strategies that I have that to support couples, it's all about a discovery. I don't come as the person with all the answers for someone, which I often get when I'm having conversations with people. Well, you're the expert, they say.
Right.
And I'm very quick to say, actually, my role is to just help people uncover for themselves what it is that, what works for them, and that I have, you know, knowledge about things that can be helpful, but how you do that in your couple, like how you show appreciation or how you understand each other or the kinds of communication that you're going to have is going to differ from couple to couple. So it's an exploration and a journey in that way. But I think, coming back to your question, I first of all, certainly the presence of sex and intimacy is one of the things that differentiates couples from flatmates. I mean, unless you have a relationship where you have sex with your flatmate, which I've been there myself. So that, you know, in the past. So, you know, you can do that, but it's that intimate piece, that piece of wanting to create something together. And when what you were saying, Karen, about people need to be in the same place and wanting that together. When people come to me, there's kind of a requirement. You have to love each other at some level. There has to be a desire for the relationship in some way. And I'm also really conscious of not labeling somebody as not wanting the relationship immediately, because sometimes we don't know that. There can be an environment that's being created inside the relationship that means one person pulls away and looks like they don't care, or looks like they're being selfish, or as people love to do is call everybody narcissistic. And I'm really careful about that term, because I think we've gotten to a place where now everyone just calls everyone a narcissist. Narcissistic looking behavior doesn't mean someone is a narcissist. It could be more that they are struggling inside, and often people shut down, especially men. It's really common for a man to shut down when they feel that they can't make their partner happy, for example, or when they feel they don't have the emotional capacity to hold space for their partner's emotions. And I say man and women, but really, honestly, in gay relationships, it's the same. There's usually one or the other. And sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes it's the woman that can't handle the man's emotional response. There's no one way to do this, but more commonly, it's the man that gets given that narcissistic label. So I always say, if you love each other, then give it a good go with somebody who can support you to discover what's getting in the way of you both participating in the relationship fully. Because very often there's one person feeling like they're doing all the work, but the work that they're doing is not the work that's needed to shift that, to shift those challenges. So so there's that piece. And so flatmates, friends. I also think one of the differences between committed relationship and flatmates and friends is that we're often much kinder to our friends and our flatmates. So I think in some ways we treat our partners, or it can get to the place where we treat our partners a little bit like the same way we treat that unkind inner voice that we have, as kind of an extension. So I think we're often kinder to our friends and the people outside us than we are to our partners. And so learning to bring back the respect and the love and the kindness into the relationship so that you can start to move forward is really important.
Wow. Wow. I mean, you've explained it so beautifully. You always serve us so well. And helping us to understand how you really have to create that environment for each other.
Yeah.
That each person, whether it's the man or the couple, each other can feel safe and feel secure in whatever moment you're experiencing, that you can hold that space and have that capacity to hold the space so that someone can really feel safe. Because I think it all needs to be, the person needs to feel safe when they're expressing their emotion or how they're feeling in that moment in time. So feeling safe, communicating how you're feeling is very essential.
Yes, it's very true. And Joan, I often talk about the kind of 4 parts to any kind of thing that's going on in a relationship. So there's what's my responsibility? What do I need to learn about the way that I'm asking for things, what I'm asking for, the boundaries that I'm setting, the ones that I'm not setting for myself as well as for my partner? Am I setting boundaries that are so firm and hard that it creates disconnection? Or am I setting a boundary that's more sort of flexible? And I don't mean flexible in terms of, oh, I'll let my boundary down, but more flexible in terms of this is what works or doesn't work, and how can I create connection in that moment? That's one person's responsibility. And then there is the other person's responsibility in how they receive what that other person is doing and giving. So if I have, you're somebody says, I'm sorry. Well, I don't need you to say sorry, or whatever it is. There's many ways that we reject what's being offered by the other, and we look for malintent in something, especially when relationships have become difficult. And all of this impacts intimacy. If anyone's wondering when we're going to get to the sex part, this is kind of it, because without this kind of this building this trust and this safety, sex and intimacy is gonna die, because it's absolutely necessary to have trust, vulnerability, safety, connection, both physical and emotional connection for intimacy and which is intimacy, but intimacy and sex to exist inside a relationship. But so there's how I show up, how the other person interacts with that, and then there's how this person shows up and how I receive that from them. And I think we're often focused on one or the other, like I'm doing everything here and you're doing nothing. You're doing it that way and I need you to do it this way. And then so I like to look at it as those 4 pieces, that there is always something we're doing. So, and I don't mean by that it's anybody's fault. So I know often when people hear the word responsibility, we think fault, and we're looking for blame, because we come from that. We come from, families often where shame and guilt and blame, and I know that very, very well. We come from blame, guilt, and shame, and that's our go-to, if you like. And so learning to understand that responsibility is actually a freedom. There's a freedom in that. When we take responsibility, we get to start to look for, what am I contributing to this? And it can be hard, because sometimes you've got somebody who's doing everything to try and fix the relationship, and they're taking care of everybody and everything. And then you say, oh, what's your responsibility? And it's like, what? I have to do more. It's actually not more. Yeah. It's actually less, because when you take responsibility, it means freedom to choose. It means wow, maybe I don't have to be doing all that thing. Maybe there's a different way. And maybe by doing, and taking care of everybody else, there's no energy left for my relationship, or there's no energy left for me to take care of myself. So then I can't show up well in my relationship. Or maybe I've been pushing for something, and then like begging my partner to be a particular way, and what that energy that's been brought has had the other shut down because they can't cope with that. They have a different way of experiencing emotions. I talk about big experiences of emotions and people who are more subtle experiences of emotions, and so learning to understand those aspects and be able to work together. So I think that piece about responsibility is really important, and differentiating that from taking on more, being to blame, that you should be shamed for stuff. I'm not into that. I don't think that's helpful. And I think we need to start to let go of and loosen some of that stuff so that we can look at, what do I need to do differently?
Right.
How can I be kinder? How can I set my boundaries in a more loving way? How can I look for the intent underneath what my partner is saying, not saying, asking for, not asking for. And of course, in all of this conversation, I am not talking about abusive relationships.
Right. Right.
Someone that if you're not safe in your relationship physically, you need to get support to get out of that relationship, at least temporarily, until you can have the space to sort that out. But I am talking about people who do love each other, but are just struggling to show it, to feel it, and really want to move their relationship to a new place.
Wow. You know, Charlene, you're really serving us well, as Joan said, and you're giving us some really helpful tips. I hope the audience that you really got have a pen and paper and you're taking some notes, because Charlene is giving us some tips that we can help ourselves in our relationship. And it's also to help us to understand our partners that we are dealing with. Because many times in a relationship, we don't even take the time to really understand our partners. We quick to do the blame game, you know, and maybe your partner maybe react in a certain way, that there's something that's bothering that person, within, and they don't have that safe space to bring it out, and we have to cultivate a space whereby we can allow our partners to speak the way and let us know how the way they're feeling. And if we cannot work it out on our own, we can always grab a coach and discuss the way how we are feeling. But we always have to try to understand the other individual that we are dealing with. Because many times you find that an individual just come out from a marriage or just came out from a relationship and they hop into another relationship. Many times you're not healed. You're not healed from that past relationship, and you hop right back into a next relationship. You're bringing all the baggages from that past relationship into the present relationship. And that those baggages has absolutely nothing to do with that person that you're dealing with now. So now as an individual, you're not offloading on that person. Now, if that individual now is not equipped enough and aware enough, that is how a lot of broken relationships happen, blame games happen, and all these things start to surface because you're not healed. Sometimes the individual that you're dealing with, they are not healed also. They are carrying around a lot of stuff also. And that is why a lot of things eventually start to happen between two people. And as Charlie rightfully said, we end up calling the other person being a narcissist. But do we really understand what that person is going through? Do we really understand that person that we are dealing with? So many times we are quick to judge, not understanding the individual that we are dealing with. So sometimes we got to step back. We got to work on ourselves. As Charlie said, we got to journey and go within ourselves, heal ourselves first, before we really put ourselves back out there to get into a meaningful, trustworthy, communicative relationship, and not just to hop for safety, not just hop for safety in another relationship without putting in the work that needs to be done. So we really need
Exactly.
to, as individuals, we really need to look at ourselves before we blame someone else.
Yeah.
Next question to you, Charlene, is why does couples struggle so much in these areas of their relationship? What is a healthy level of intimacy and sex in a relationship? We're getting to the sex now.
I also do want to acknowledge there's some really great comments here, so I want to answer your question. But would it be okay if we just took a moment with, because some of the comments
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
are wonderful. So I see here, Tom, thank you for your statements and for sharing, because it's really beautiful. Tom shared some things with us before we began about the shift in his relationship, so in recent times. So I really want to honour that. But he said that sometimes the best way to open up your relationship is just to focus on your own selfishness in the relationship.
Yes.
And I think that's really, it's very profound what you said, because I think selfishness, there's a part about needing to be more selfish in some ways, in terms of taking care of ourselves. And yet selfishness is something else. And sometimes looking at, how am I not showing up in the relationship? How am I not participating? And how am I putting all of my own needs first? Because in a relationship, sometimes the relationship is what comes, and often the relationship is what's needed, is what needs the focus, and that includes everything. And you spoke beautifully, Joan, before about all the parts of us. There's our our health and our contribution, and having any relationship is impacted by all the parts of all our lives, plus all the parts of our relationship. It's quite, it's a very complex system in a way. And yet, so there is a part about making sure that we take care of ourselves, but focusing just on what I want and you're not giving me what I want is probably not going to have you working as a team towards having a relationship that works for both of you. So I just want to really honour that. And also just something else that Tom said, which is, I think, another piece of this, which is also the way that you view things. And he talked about his partner being in the ER and had 2 days in the hospital, and rather than seeing that as a burden, it shifted their relationship to a loving connection. And I think that's really, it's really important. And I'm going to use that to lead into your question a bit, or what you're talking about, Karen, because very often we have we not only bring our past relationships to the new relationship, but we bring the past hurts from this relationship into today. Yes. And I'm also a firm believer that we can't heal relationally on our own. So I do believe that there's healing that needs to be done, whether that's done inside a new relationship or outside of any relationship. I've seen people who go straight in from one relationship to another, and they learn what they need to learn, and they shift that and have amazing relationship. So I think there's not a rule about don't get into a relationship straight away. I think some people, it does work for some people. For others, they need to do their own work. However, whatever work you do individually, ultimately, it's not going to, when you get into a relationship, you're still going to get triggered by the same things, because, and that's what's so beautiful and profound about loving, committed relationships, is because an intimate relationship with another human being will bring up all of our insecurities in a way that no other relationship will. So you can go off and do all of your personal work and understand the past relationship and be super clear, and then you'll get into another relationship and you're going to get triggered. And so what I think is really, really powerful is, can you be willing to just appreciate that both of you bring your baggage?
Yes. Yes.
And that your relationship starts now. And it's whatever moment you're in, you can do. And the future of your relationship is not based on the past unless you live there.
True.
Yes. Yes.
So true.
Have this past, acknowledge that you've got challenges from the past. And then there is, what do I have now? What do I need to do in this moment? If I get triggered with an emotion from something from the past, let's face it, a triggered emotion literally means that we've been taken back to a memory of something else. And so there is, how can I notice that that happened and make a different choice? And for some people, that's a journey in and of itself. For others of us, we can notice that that's what's happened, and find a way to come back to some kind of center. And that's the growth that's necessary for your relationship to be healthy, is to go, wow, something showed up here. What is that? And what's my choice right now? And what do I want going forward? Because the future, if you want a healthy relationship in the future, it starts with right now, right now, right now, right now, and being in the present moment as often as you can be. So just wanted to touch on that. So now sorry, can you ask your question again, Karen? Because I went off track.
Why do couples struggle so much in these areas of their relationship?
Yes.
What is a healthy level of intimacy and sex in a relationship?
It's great. So the first thing is that there are many, many factors for why relationships start to lose intimacy and sex. And we talked a little bit about this before. First of all, one of the things is when you lose trust. And trust is actually, sadly, it's easily broken, but it's the very small things that you can do that bring it back. So trust is broken by not being there for each other. And, all relationships go through ups and downs, and having a stable base so that you can support each other through the downs and celebrate each other in the ups is really important. And that builds trust. Being vulnerable, being able to share how you feel, responding with kindness, with love towards your partner, turning, I think it's Dr. Gottman talks about turning towards your partner instead of turning away from. So all of those small things, spending time together, just time enjoying each other. And it's amazing how difficult that can be for some couples. So I've worked with couples that really struggled to find even 10 minutes a day to even just be with each other.
Wow.
And I've even supported couples who've had to break down because, it's the small actions. We have to start small. Sometimes we think we have to do these big actions to build.
Right.
Nope, it's the small things. But with some couples, it might be even as much as with one couple they had to make a list of things they appreciated about each other because they couldn't think of anything in the moment, and stick it on the fridge. And the task that they took on was 1 minute a day. When they passed in the kitchen, they had to stop for 1 minute in the kitchen because that's where they stuck their lists to appreciate each other. It was that it had to be that small for them because it was so difficult for them to do that. Another couple, as I said, who couldn't even find 10 minutes to spend with each other because their lives were so full and busy. And when you don't have time for your relationship, there's no time for building that closeness. Intimacy is about emotional closeness and feeling safe and being able to be vulnerable. And so those things are really, really important. There's being able to talk about intimacy and sex. Karen, you talked about understanding your partner. It's equally important to understand yourself. And in the area of sex and intimacy, things change.
Yes.
We all change. I don't know about the two of you, but what I love and enjoy sexually and intimately is very different from when I was 25.
Yes.
Yeah.
I know that I look 25, but I'm not.
You look amazing.
But but those things are really important. So having a discovery, so curiosity in your relationship is super important for a healthy, intimate and sex life. Being able to have those conversations, because they're really challenging. A lot of us, I was brought up in a very repressive religious family where I was the only one of my there were there's 5 of us in my family, and I was the only sibling, it turns out. I was the middle child, so I don't know why this worked this way. Mum must have taken 2 kids to pluck up a courage, and then it was so traumatic that she dropped it away for the other 2. But I was the only one that she gave any talk about birds and bees and, goodness, don't use too many words like penis or anything, because we were from a very religious family. And she used to take me into my parents' walk-in wardrobe, and we would shut the door and sit amongst her clothing while she showed me a book about getting your period, and what you couldn't do when you had your period, and how you make babies. And apparently I was the only one in the family that actually got that information. So I think she was hoping I would have passed it on to my younger. She just forgot to give me that footnote, so I didn't do that. So we've all got things that that are, it's such a taboo topic. And so that even couples coming to me, surprisingly lots, I live in Europe. Europe's very different from the UK, even from the US, from Australia, where we're much more, Europe's a bit more open about talking about this. So if I have couples that have any European flavour, they tend to be, one of the first things they say is, and we're having no sex. Whereas if it's a British couple or people from somewhere else, sometimes it takes a little bit longer to get into that conversation. So there's examining our beliefs about sex and intimacy, and how often should we have it? How often should we be intimate? How often should we be having sex? The good news and the bad news is there is no number. So it is about a conversation that you have together and starting to talk about, what do we want? How often do I want it? How often do you want it? How often are we having it? What does intimacy even look like? Because there are many ways to be intimate with each other. And there's some really great books on this topic. I love Vanessa Marin, I think you say her name. My apologies, Vanessa. I'm not quite sure how to say her last name. Marin is how I would say it in Spanish. But she wrote a book with her husband Xander called Sex Talks. And they talk about the 5 conversations you should have, and taking intimacy right down to, what do you like? Where do you like to be touched? How often do you like to be touched? Where do you like to be kissed? What kind of kissing do you like? We've got many parts of our bodies. We've got many ways that you can touch. And so just starting to explore some of those things and discover getting into that inquiry of how does desire look? What does desire look like for me? And for many people, usually we're attracted to someone who's different from us. So you might be someone who needs sex in order to feel connected, which, by the way, has a basis in emotional connection, although it often looks different to that. And you'll have the partner that's someone who needs emotional connection first. The bad news for people who think that their desire is to connect is physical, they do have to learn to emotionally connect first. That's kind of the bad news for those. But even someone who connects through sex, feels that connection through sex or through physical contact, it is about emotional connection at the end of the day. So learning to understand those things it's a big piece and a big puzzle, but coming to it with curiosity is really important. And then you can start to learn what is it that you're comfortable with? What is it that you want to explore together? How do you do desire differently? And what's the amount of sex that would work in your case? I know a couple who decided that sex is actually just not part of their relationship, and they have an incredibly loving, intimate, long-term relationship, and neither of them want sex with each other. And they both feel fine with that. I'm not to judge that. But it's for you as a couple to explore. Tom said that our intimacy now can be reading books in bed, and our sex relationship is mostly touch now. And that's I think the most important thing is having these conversations so that you are both getting what you need. And so if that's touch for the two of you is all that you need, beautiful, celebrate that. Make sure you have it as often as you can or as often as you need it. And, listen for each other and learning to listen to, what do I need? What do I need to ask for? How can I ask for it in a loving way? And how can I not reject my partner with what they're asking for as well?
Wow. I think that is so essential because the level of communication, getting it right down to what do I want and what are my desire, expressing that to your partner is so neat because then we come to one commonality that we are understanding each other, we are understanding what our desires are, we are understanding that we are willing to explore this, and this is what makes me happy, this is what makes you happy, and so we can live a life of being more harmonious because
Yes,
we're satisfied with each other, and whatever it is that we are, the ask is, let's put it that way, whatever the ask is, we're able to meet or match our partner desire and feelings and emotion and give them that.
absolutely. And I think too, another thing that's really important to mention here, because this comes up a lot when I'm working with couples, when we're talking about communication in general, which, by the way, another thing that's needed for intimacy and uh, and sex to exist in your relationship is to have healthy communication. If you're someone that constantly nags your partner, or you're someone who constantly shuts down, or you're somebody who constantly speaks unkindly or criticizes um, or is defensive, then you're going to make it very difficult for intimacy and sex to be present, at least for one person, if not both. And I think the important, and when we talk about improving communication, a really common thing that comes up for couples is, oh, but it's so hard to do that. Let's say, be kinder. It's like, oh, it's so hard to do that because in the moment, and that's the key thing, is that these conversations, that when you're starting to change something, you don't want to start learning to swim when you're in the middle of drowning. That
Sure.
doesn't make any
Right.
sense. And so having these conversations outside the bedroom, having conversations when you're not angry about how are we going to navigate when
Mm-hmm.
this shows up? What am I going to do? What could I
Mm-hmm.
practice outside those very emotional moments, or pressure, sexual moments of feeling pressure from your partner to have sex when you don't want it, or feeling
Right.
rejected because your partner said no, all of those things, those conversations need to happen outside those times so that you start to build that. That's building your emotional intimacy, is having those conversations when you're calm. And if you've got a partner that doesn't want to talk about these things, approaching it from a loving place of curiosity, not when you're in the bedroom trying to have sex with each other, or trying to not have sex with each other, or whatever that is. So, yeah.
How can someone deal, because as how coaches we deal, people talk to us all the time about different things, and how so I know you touched on a point there. How can someone deal? I know you talk about it outside of the bedroom. So how do someone manage in the bedroom and someone is not in the mood for having sex? How do you deal with that?
It's a great question, Joan. I think the first thing starts with a desire to accept and appreciate each other. And when you do that, it comes about how you communicate that. So if my partner, for example, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, or says, I want to have sex with you, or says, hey, we haven't had sex in a while, and you don't want to have it, then learning to communicate that in a loving way. And there's a great relationship coach. Her name's Dr. Cheryl, she calls herself. And she says, never say I'm not in the mood again.
Mm.
And I love that, because there's something about a truthfulness in the communication. It requires some vulnerability, which is why talking about sex outside the bedroom will make this easier. But being able to say to your partner, I really don't feel like I'm feeling really tired tonight. So I don't feel that I can build up my desire right now. But I really want to be able to have sex with you. Could we, have it on Saturday? And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second as well. So there's the idea of being honest about what it is, because you want to be building not what commonly happens, especially I'm going to do something that I want to say is not always this way, but I'm going to use man, woman. So please forgive me, anyone who is in, there's 2 women, 2 men, whichever this is for you, or whatever you identify as. There's usually one person in the relationship who wants it more than the other, feels the desire more easily than the other. And so what you don't want to do is leave that person who's initiated feeling ashamed, feeling embarrassed, feeling rejected. And that's the common feeling. And then eventually they just stop asking. And that's when you end up with nothing. So if somebody is doing the initiating, then it's important to be honest with them about what's going on and letting them know that it's not a lack of desire for them or not a rejection of them, but rather that right now is just not it. And could we and be willing to set another time, or to let them know what you would be willing to do, because maybe you don't want penetrative sex, for example, but you could be open to massaging each other, or that you can set some time to be intimate at another time. So always looking for how can I take care of my own needs and what I need, and communicate it in a loving way, as well as appreciating what the other one does. And Vanessa Marin also talks about this, which I really love. She says that you can always choose. You don't have to say yes to everything. And this goes with anything in your relationship. You don't have to say yes to everything. But being a hard no means that you're blocking connection. So she talks about even if you don't feel like it, you can still say yes, or you can say not right now. And because we can that and having that ability to check in and go, I don't really want to, but I could do it. I could do it knowing that it's going to bring us some connection. Or you could say, no, right now it really is not going to bring connection. So let me say something loving and find another time to do that.
Wow. Charlene, again, you're really serving us well. And to the audience, I hope you're taking your notes, because many times we are struggling in our relationship and we're looking for answers so we can move forward, and Charlene give us some real good points, some real good tips, gems that we can add to our toolbox and help us when we reach up to a roadblock in our relationship. We can always reach for these tools and start to use these tools in our relationship to help us to move forward. And we tend to not say the way how we feel, or sometimes we give mixed messages to our partners, and that could be very confusing for the other partner. So we need to be very straightforward the way how we are feeling, and help that person to understand exactly the way how you are feeling. Because if you give mixed messages, it can land sometime really hard, right, Charlene?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, and I think I love it. There's a really great exercise that you can do, which is just to look at, the way that you ask for something in your relationship. There's a great game that I use with couples about offer and block, that we're always in a relationship making an offer of some description, which doesn't mean would you take out the rubbish for me necessarily, but it can just be an offer for connection in some way, or for asking the other person to help them meet a deeper need
Yeah.
So, for example, I might say something like, I hate it when you never take out I hate it when you don't take out the rubbish, or why don't you ever take out the rubbish? Let's take something simple like that. There is an underlying request that I'm making there, which is to appreciate me more, perhaps. That could be one of the reasons. Like, I don't feel valued and appreciated because you don't do things for me. And often we get upset by the thing on the surface. It's the same when someone says no to sex. We take the no and feel rejected instead of, what's underneath that? Because there's always something underneath. And those mixed messages are the same, because often we haven't learned to be clear, or we're afraid to be clear in case someone says no and rejects us in some way. And so learning to be clearer, for your partner to learn to look for what's underneath and be a little more curious, can help that defensiveness. So an exercise that's really helpful to do is to look at, how do I make offers to my partner? Am I direct in the way that I ask for something? I don't feel really appreciated. When you take out the rubbish, it makes me feel so appreciated. Would you do it for me today? That's a clear offer. Now I know why I'm doing that. Or do you make offers that are a little more tricky, like, why don't you ever take out the rubbish? Instead of saying, I need to feel valued and appreciated. So starting to notice what are some of the common ways that you get stuck in your communication, and make some notes about that. Like, how do I make my offers? Am I being clear, or am I making it so hard for my partner to understand? Or another example might be, I'm going to bed early tonight. And underneath, they're kind of hoping that the partner will realize that they want you to come to bed. You want them to come to bed with you, so they snuggle with you. And when you don't, you feel rejected. When they don't, you feel rejected. And so that would be a completely trickster offer. So then there is, what could your partner do with that? They could get upset, or they could just assume you're just going to bed and not thinking anything of it, and then wonder why your partner's really angry with you the next day. Or you could say, when you said you wanted to go to bed early, did you really want to go to bed early, or were you really inviting me to come and snuggle with you?
Right.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to come back from that. And that's what we would call an offer back, rather than a block, which might be, right, see you, good night, then, and not looking for what's underneath. And sometimes there isn't anything underneath. The person goes, yeah, I just wanted to go to bed early. Oh, great. Let me give you a hug and kiss you good night. When someone says, you never take out the rubbish, and your partner can go, well, and get defensive and call back, or they can recognize that their partner's not feeling valued and say something like, oh, wow, I'm sorry, did I not tell you how much I love and appreciate you?
Right.
Let me just take the rubbish out for you. That would be an offer back rather than a defensive block. And so these are starting to look at these in your communication, and it's same in the bedroom, same with sex, same with intimacy, same with any communication, is how can we start to understand the way we're communicating and the way we're responding in return, and start to shift that dynamic a little.
Wow. Wow.
Yes. Tom just said he's 73. And can I just say, Tom, if you're 73, I'm 97. You're incredible. I'm 73. And his partner's 65. And cuddles are a key part of their healing and intimacy. I love it. And, there's a big part of all of this. Again, often some of this stuff feels really hard, especially if you're stuck. And the one thing that I would love for people to take away from this is that, number one, it just starts with a desire for something different, and just a willingness to do something different. And if you can't even find the willingness, imagining that you could be willing is a really beautiful place to start, especially if you're stuck and angry. Could you just have just a window of an imagining that you could be willing to do something different? And that in and of itself is a shift. And then there is, what is the very small thing that I could do differently? How am I contributing to our loss of intimacy, our lack of sex, our arguments, our loss of trust? What's one thing that I could do slightly differently? And even if it's small, I was talking about chemistry, don't, any scientists out there, don't quote me, but don't jump on me too much for this. But if I remember from my chemistry classes, if you have two molecules that are interacting with each other in some way, they have to be doing a particular dance in order for that dance to continue.
Yes.
And when one molecule gets changed in any way, the other molecule has to change. And that's why when I'm working with couples, it doesn't, as long as there's love and both people want to be in the relationship, I can start with one person, because one person, when they see something that they're doing that they can shift, the other person can't help but shift. Now, that doesn't always go the way you want it to, but anything is better than staying stuck in something that's not supporting both of you. And if that change means that it's obvious that it's time to separate, then it's better that than being in a relationship that's stuck and causing a lot of pain. And then you can learn to, how can we separate with love and with respect from each other as well? So there's that piece too.
Wow. Truly amazing, Charlene. You have given us so much today. You fed us well. My last question to you. How can couples repair flagging intimacy and sex in their relationship? And what can couples do to prevent the loss of this important ingredient of a committed long-term relationship?
I think probably we've perhaps answered some of that a little bit, but I would say how to recover this is certainly to begin a journey of exploration, bring in some curiosity, start to have conversations outside the bedroom about sex, about intimacy, start to explore what it is that's important to you, what builds desire for you, what builds desire for your partner, what are the things that are kind of that doesn't really work for me, and how can you communicate that in a loving way, building that trust with each other. Building starting to look at those patterns in the way that you communicate with each other, how you're showing up. If you're somebody that has the turtle style of communication, where when things get a little bit heated, or then you duck into your shell, and some people call it, John Gottman calls it stonewalling. Some people do that deliberately. Some people do it just as a matter of kind of safety, a way of getting away from that to calm their nervous system. So if that's one of your styles of communication, then that's helpful to understand, and then know that it's important for setting boundaries. Like if someone's shouting at you and calling you names, it's very important to be able to set boundaries and say, please, that's not working for either of us. We need to take some time out. And a turtle communicator is very good at that. What they need to learn is not to disappear when they do that, ducking into their turtle shell. And if you're someone who communicates like a ram, and you never feel understood, and you just go, and the person, your partner turtle, leaves the room to try and get away from and you follow them into the other room, then those people are usually good for communicating, for bringing up topics. But you've got to remember that when you're doing that, you're potentially triggering your partner's need for safety, and their only mechanism might be to shut down. Now neither of you get what you want. So it's starting to look at what are those things that I could shift slightly. And that's all important, because all of this leads to sex and intimacy. How can we touch each other? How can we bring in more kissing? 6-second kisses. They've done research that shows it takes 6 seconds of a kiss for oxytocin to be released. So if you're a couple that is just pecking each other on the lips, probably not going to create a lot of closeness and love if there's other things going on. Same with hugs. How long do you hug for? They did some research about this, and from what I can gather, there's no particular length of time that's important for a hug, but what you do want to do is hug until you both feel the relaxation with each other before you let go. For some people, that can be a few seconds. For others, it might be 30. So finding what that is and making sure that you're taking moments to have time together. And I think really, Karen, in answer to your question, how do you prevent things going wrong is kind of the same as how do you bring it back. It's all the same. Really, how do you prevent it is making sure that you make your sex and intimacy and communication and trust and love and kindness and boundaries and that are gentle and loving, bringing kindness, all of those things is making sure those things don't disappear. And so that takes conscious effort. And, if you don't want to bring conscious effort to your relationship, then it's going to be pretty hard to imagine that your relationship's going to last the distance, at least in a healthy way. And so bringing things back is go back to what worked in the beginning. What were the things that you did for each other? How did you speak to each other? What memories could you bring in? I always say the past is useful for the things that we often use the past to remember why we should be angry with our partner, or all the terrible things that our partner's done that we've stacked on top of each other. And that's one way to do a relationship. But there's also all those beautiful memories that you've got. And sometimes if people leave it too long, I've met couples that can't even remember a time when they felt love for their partner. It's probably you might have left it a little too late, or it's going to take a lot more work. So if you can use the past to look for the things that worked, and how can you bring some of those things back in and start to build, and remember that one small step of that molecule, one small thing that you do differently is going to make a difference. And what is absolutely certain is that if you do the same thing the same way, and if you try to change your relationship with the same level of thinking that created the relationship that you've got today, then nothing's going to change. And so that's why I always talk about today is the day. Like one thing that you commit to today that you're going to do differently. Change your tone slightly. Write down all the ways that you want to feel in your relationship. How can you what's one thing you could do to bring that feeling into the relationship? If I want to have more gratitude, I want to be appreciated. How can I appreciate? It's that energy thing we were talking about before. Bringing in the energy of gratitude and love starts with me. If I'm not feeling love, how can I create that energy in myself? How can I be the person that is the love that I want to bring into the relationship? Because that will start to change things. So one small thing, if you take away nothing, one small thing would be amazing.
Wow. I'm just going to drop one quick thing here. When do you know it's time to leave? I have to go from that relationship.
Joan, I don't personally think that there's a single answer to that. I mean, I would certainly say if you're unsafe, physically unsafe, or being mentally tortured, then now is the time to leave. With most couples, and certainly I think people have an unfortunate relationship with getting help for a relationship. So I also am a wedding celebrant, so I do civil ceremonies for people, and I give as a gift a free gift voucher for a session with me. And people often say to me, why would you do that? Because we all need to learn skills, and why would I wait until the relationship is nearly dead to help? Unfortunately, it's what we do. We wait till we have health issues before we start to help.
Sure.
We have mental health issues and anxiety that cripples us before we seek the solutions to those things. And so I would love to, if I had my way to change the world, it would be, and for myself included, by the way, I'm no saint around this. I'm not great with my exercise, I've got to be honest. But these things, we wait until things are too far gone. So I would say that when you're fully in love with each other and having a wonderful time, that's a really good time to start working with someone to go, how do we keep this going?
Right.
Yes.
But when couples come to me, again, if they love each other, I always ask them for one thing, first of all, and that is that they commit to the time with me with 100% commitment. Even if you come with, I'm not sure, I think we should probably break up, then I ask that you have that commitment, because if you don't come to coaching with me with a desire to make it work, you won't commit fully to doing what it takes.
Right.
And relationships can be turned around. It's extraordinary how relationships can be turned around. And we don't know what that takes, because we are in the situation, again, as I said before, because of the thinking and the habits that we've got us here. And so I always ask couples to commit. If they can't commit, then that's therapy could be an option for either or both. And people who come to me also often go to therapy to work out some of their own stuff, because I work with the couple who are able and willing to at least take responsibility for their part and make changes and be willing for that and be willing to see a future. And so I think that if couples come with that desire, and if they come with that willingness, even if they don't know how, then it gives their relationship the greatest chance of survival and thriving. But I think it is an individual thing. And some people say, look, I love this person a lot. We just are it's just not going to happen. If you've got that in your mind, then now is a good time to leave as well. And sometimes that's not easy because there's children and there's always reasons that it's hard to do that. And there is a lot more suffering the longer that you leave this stuff. It never gets easier to leave, or rarely gets easier to leave. And there's also the impact that it has on your children, living in a relationship that's tense or loveless or all of those things. And really, there's lots of things to weigh up. So that's why I would never say to anybody, this is when you should leave, because I think it's an individual thing.
Exactly.
And you do have to look at that. But sometimes we need to also check the reality, because often, I don't know about you, but sometimes I go, oh, for example, I don't have time to do X, Y, Z. And then something really bad happens, and suddenly I've got all this time to support a friend in need, for example, that I didn't have time to go for a coffee with last week, Yes. So I think it's also important to remember that we'll find time for what's really important to us. And what are we making a priority? And if your relationship is unhealthy, if it's damaging, and it's not something that you're willing to commit to doing something about, then it's worth considering whether finding a way out before, so that you can leave with, I would say, if you're going to leave, do it at a time when you can leave with love and respect, especially if you're parents, because you've got a co-parent.
Exactly.
So,
There's a question I want to ask you, Charlene, before we wrap things up, because sometimes I've heard this more than on one occasions, that sometimes you find a woman, she would anticipate that making a child for a man would hold that man in her life, whereby the man have absolutely no intention of really holding on to that relationship with that child within the relationship. Can you explain that? Is that within your scope of practice?
I mean, I'm happy to make an observation about it. So I don't tend to work with couples where that's the case. I haven't up until now. However, I do have something to say about that, and I think It's super. That comes back to the values thing.
Mhm.
That if you are with somebody who doesn't want what you want, something that's really important to you, it is a mistake
Mhm.
to trap anybody into something they don't want. And in addition to that, I would say having children to save a relationship is
Right.
another big mistake. Now,
Right.
do some people have children and it brings them closer together? It happens. Again, there's no hard and fast rule for these things, but in general, having a child with somebody who does not want one is going to create challenges for you unless in your mind you've decided that you want a child and you're going to do it on your own at some point. But asking somebody to be a father when they don't want to be a father, expecting a woman to have a child with you or hoping that they'll change their mind when a woman doesn't want to have a child, equally valid. It's just going to make it really difficult for you to trust each other. And putting these things out on the table at the beginning of a relationship is super important. And that it's not an easy choice to make, and no one can make it for you. But if you're with someone who says, I don't want a child, and then you have a child, you get pregnant because you hope you'll change their mind, you're really setting yourself up for a lot of suffering. And I think it's unfair to yourself, it's unfair to the child, and it's unfair to the person that said they didn't want one. And so I think, and you know, if you want to be a single parent, there's lots of ways to do that these days. Women can have children on their own, men can have children. It's a little harder for a man to have a child on his own, because I think there's lots of laws that make that difficult. But you know, it is super important, not just children, but anything else that you value, that you want, need to be conversations that you have long before you even get into any kind of commitment with each other.
Sure.
I believe, if you want to have a successful relationship going forward.
That's so true.
Well, Sharlene, you have served us well.
Wow.
Well, thank you for your questions. I really appreciate you both very much. And thank you for the opportunity to talk about this stuff, because I love being able to do this. And if anyone gets anything small out of it, then I've achieved my intention for contribution, because that's, you know, I really think that this thing about relationships with our committed partners, you know, I look, the world right now is in a not a great state. And if we want peace of any description in the world, if we can't have it in our own homes, then we can't expect respect and love and valuing another human being's life. And because if we can't even do that in our own homes, and I just think it's really, I would love for this to be part of the school curriculum, that kids learn this growing up, that we don't have another generation of people who grow up not communicating, thinking that marriage or that saying yes to a relationship or having a child suddenly means that, you know, magically everything's going to be beautiful for the future. Take a hammer to that, I say, and know that relationships take work, they take commitment, they take daily commitment to making it work, and it takes wanting to grow together, wanting to learn, being willing to step through our fears, being willing to be courageous, being willing to be curious. And even if you don't know how to do that, as I said, just imagine that you're willing to is a really great place to start. And if we could start bringing more love into homes and more respect and appreciation and joy, then we've got a much greater chance of doing that outside of our homes as well.
Sure.
So
Wow.
thank you.
You're so on point with what you just said there, those final words, because I think that our future generation really need to hear things like these, you know, because a lot of times they think that in a relationship is a fairy tale, you know, and They think that things just is gonna happen just like that. They really don't understand it's work you have to put in
Mm.
into a relationship, what you expect. The things just happen overnight like that. And I think what you rightfully said there, that our future generation really need to understand this moving forward with their lives. Charlene, thank you so much. You have
Thank you.
you have enriched this community today with your wisdom. This feel like coaching, you know. This feel like coaching
Mm.
because you have given us all the pointers that we really need to help ourselves as individual and partners to enhance our relationship, enhance our own personal lives also. Moving forward in a relationship, we need to look at ourselves. We really need to go within ourselves, journey within, as you said, and help ourselves to understand, you know, excuse me, help ourselves to understand, you know what? It starts with us. Before, excuse me, I'm choking up because a lot of times people come to us and they would ask us so many questions, and you can see the burning desire within them
Mm.
that they're struggling to move forward with their lives and they don't know which direction to turn.
Mm.
It's really hard for them because sometimes it's different cultures. They have to
Yes.
borrow because they come from different cultures background, and they are struggling on that point in their lives. And sometimes they love each other, but just coming together on that common foundation, they find a very hard time to do it.
Mm.
And if you're that person looking to this show today, reach out to Charlene, have
Mhm.
a talk with her. You can save your marriage, you can save your relationship. It all starts with you. You have to make that choice.
Mhm.
I'm going to do this to myself, I'm going to do this to my partner. It all starts with you. Reach out to Charlene, have a talk with her. And Charlene is going to know how to articulate with you and to help you to move forward with your relationship. John?
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
Yeah,
You have brought so much clarity to this discussion, which many times people don't want to talk about it. But
true.
you've dived deep and give us all the meat and all the ingredients, like we baking a cake, what it entails when we're talking about sex, intimacy, and commitment for a relationship, and what should be established from jump before we even
True.
get involved to
Mm-hmm.
create a relationship, and what it also entails, because it's hard work. What are we wanting to put in to make this work?
Excuse
How
me. Yeah.
communication is so important, when what we want in the bedroom, how communication is important, how we ask for what we want, how we create value for someone else, so that we really can have that harmonious relationship, that beauty, how we can enjoy that bliss and live in a
True.
space committed to each other, love each other with love, kindness,
Mm-hmm.
respect, setting those
True.
boundaries that you
Mm-hmm.
talk about, that is so important, because setting those boundaries is for us both parties, to have that
True.
level of well-being, to live well mentally, physically, emotionally, and so that the junction which we are at, and the space that we are in, we can move that relationship forward. And you also spoke about, think about the things that brought you together. Think
True.
about what brought you together, that you got so much love, so much butterflies,
Mm-hmm.
so much excitement in the moment that it all got started. So when things kind of fade a little, start fading, or doesn't look, enough in that moment, think about why we got together. And
Beautiful.
when we can go back and reflect and have that self-awareness and do the work, then we can enjoy that bliss. Then we can have the level of respect. We can have the level of excitement. We can evolve that relationship and just live and travel on this journey called life and just get what we want as we continue to live in the level of greatness, joy, and happiness and peace. So we just want to say thank you. We want to give you your flowers because every time we talk, we meet, and we get into a space, it's just enrichment that you give us. Greatness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you to both of you for this beautiful space that you create for people to learn and grow and experience what it's like to be in the presence of love. So I want to really acknowledge that. And I do now need to go because I have clients at the door waiting for their session. So I need to go. They're buzzing, buzzing, buzzing. So, but thank you so much to both of you for this opportunity, for all that you give
Yes.
and put out in the world. And thank you to everybody who joined us for our unexpected early live. And hopefully those who didn't get to see it didn't get to be here will get to see the recording. So thank you again.
Yes.
Thanks everybody. Have a
Thank
beautiful,
you.
beautiful week.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.